With this, we move to the next session. Last but not the least, we have in store a panel discussion on can ER&D industry pivot India's economic growth? A question that is, let me quickly introduce to you to all our moderators and the panelists over there. So our moderator, Mr. Sameer Yagnik, along with the panelists, GNB Subbarao, Vinay Shenoy, and Abhishek Sinha. Sameer possesses over 30 years of experience in ER&D in the automotive, aerospace, and heavy engineering industry with a special emphasis on enabling e-mobility solutions. Sameer currently heads and runs Electro Drive Powertrain Solutions Private Limited and is actively involved in the ER&D Council of NASSCOM for over 12 years and continues to do that. Prior to Electra SV, Sameer was working with Tata Technologies for over 22 years as COO and President. Vinay is currently the Managing Director in Infineon Technologies India Private Limited with more than 2 decades of experience in Indian semiconductor industry. He has also been associated with telecom, digital broadcasting, and consumer electronic industries, where he was majorly responsible for strategy and new business creation for emerging markets. Vinay was also the chairman of Indian Electric and Semiconductor Association for the year 2015-16. GNV Subbarao, in his current capacity, is the global head for process control platform and head of ABB Ability Innovation Center. Earlier to the current role, he was heading ABB's global R&D and engineering outfit in India, where he not only led the R&D, but ABB's presence constituting the entire value starting with research, development, engineering, and service. For almost 2 decades with ABB, GNV has taken on multiple roles, including local division in India. Another of our panelists over here is Abhishek Sinha. He's the Chief Operating Officer and whole-time Director at LNTTS, focusing on quality, cost efficiency delivery, client and employee satisfaction. His key strengths are making the business competitive through strategy formulation and execution, operational excellence, and talent leadership. So we start with a discussion over here. Over to you, Sameer.
Thank you. Thank you, Titli. Hi, everyone. I hope you can see me. This is obviously one of the first roundtables that we are, or e-panel discussions that we are conducting. So greetings to everyone. Everybody hopefully is safe and indoors. I would first extend my warm welcome to the panelists. By the way, if there's any problem of hearing me, I'm going to be slow. But if you have any issues of hearing me, I'm going to first switch off my video and then hopefully the bandwidth will hold up. But anyway, I'd like to extend my warm welcome to GNV, Vinay, and Abhishek. I think these are stalwarts in our industry in their own rights, and hopefully we'll have an engaging session. After having gone through 3 sessions, Ajay, your insightful session, Mackenzie's, I think a very fantastic presentation on the overall impact that can happen and future factors, perspectives as well, which was insightful indeed. So, you know, without much ado, I'd like to first give my comments. And Titli and Devanshi, am I audible and visible? Just a quick check.
Yes, yes, Sameer.
Okay, very good. So in many ways, guys, and you know, ladies, if there are, we in the ER&D world, of course, we represent Indian ER&D community, were, you know, nicely moving along. We were at about $40 billion of overall business, and we met often. The council meets pretty often, sometimes virtually, but also physically, something that we might have to revise going forward. But, you know, of the total IT industry of India, which is close to about 190 billion, that represents approximately about 20% of the business. Now, interestingly enough, and everybody knows this, that we've been growing at 11 to 12% versus some of the other IT industry, you know, segments which have been growing at a lower rate. And the expected forecast prior to COVID has been that the overall IT industry will move up to about 350 billion by 2025, and 30% of that will come from the ER&D work. So that's the kind of analysis based on also McKinsey's report and various Everest reports and various of the different consulting organizations, and then the ER&D Council has adopted that as the guidance. So we were in fact thinking about how do we take that 11 to 12% growth to 18 to 20% growth, and how can we be at $100 billion, which was our kind of target. Now here comes along COVID. It's shattering. It's really sad to see what's going on in the world. In fact, politicians and many health workers and virologists around the world had warned us that this would happen, but countries had their own priorities. And remember the word priorities. Had their own priorities, and here we are. We face one of the biggest black swan events of mankind in at least 100 years, if not 200, where so many countries are impacted. It's a worldwide crisis. I won't go on about that, but I think, and Ajay mentioned it, that if we were to look at the cup half full and really focus on the positives, and now with a tectonic shift assured that we will have to make, we'll have to make a shift in the way we think. We rethink our entire service model, our entire engagement model. We can harness, and particularly because I've got to say this, the socio-political, positives that come out for India are seemingly or perceptibly far better than some of the other countries. And we will not get into that discussion today, but looking at the cup half full, I will like to engage my esteemed panelists, GNV, Vinay, and Abhishek. I'd also like to refer to some of the presentations that were made earlier. The 5R model of McKinsey and, the survive, recover, and reinvent and be resilient model that the Future Factors folks have given us. On that basis, how do you see first GNV? And of course, sorry, we're not having Regu with us today, which is unfortunate. There's some personal situation. But nonetheless, GNV, first over to you. You may want to introduce yourself once again, your company, and how this whole thing has impacted you thus far. And I'll use the word that these guys had used, McKinsey. How is your microscopic view, before we get to telescopic, how is your microscopic view of how this whole COVID scenario has impacted you and your organization? GNV.
Hi, Samir. Thanks. Glad to be here in this discussion. Yeah, a brief about myself. I'm GNV Subbarao. I had the global automation group for ABB, which is one of the mainstays of ABB. ABB is a company which is into electrification and automation roughly forms about 30 to 40% of our company's turnover. So that's about me and ABB in brief, but without spending much time on that, let's move on to the discussion that we have here, we have lined up for today. I would say, I mean, if you come from a background of what COVID-19 is doing for us, and then how we are sort of surviving, how we plan to recover, reinvent, etc., etc. So let me start with survival, and then look at it in two baskets, I would say, or two categories. One is survival for the businesses themselves, and in a very telescopic way, that is what we would have to look at, because ultimately businesses drive what we do in ER&D. And then the microscopic view would be, as per me, what we do in ER&D and how we are faring. As far as the businesses go, I think it is it's pretty clear that they're going to be, I would say, it's going to take a heavy toll. How heavy would depend on which sector we are in. There are certain sectors like automotive, then probably travel, logistics, oil and gas, which is going to be certainly hit in a very big way. We are already seeing many signs of those. And there are going to be other sectors which are going to be hit, but not in a very big way. And surprisingly, there are going to be sectors which are going to thrive also on this situation. So that's about how the businesses would see this sort of say crisis in different degrees and different ways. Coming to ER&D, I would say from my point of view, while we have been hit because of the nature of our work that we do, both in engineering as well as R&D, the effect has not been very sort of shattering. I would say that we have, if I have to sum up all that's been happening in the 4 or 5 or maybe even 6 weeks since all this started, I think we have managed it quite well, and we are surviving quite, to a large extent quite well. And I would say that when I look at the output that comes out of my teams, also output that comes out of me because of being tied at home, it's probably a little more than what would happen during normal times. So I would say we are surviving quite well in the ER&D area, and then that would probably mean that reinvention would follow, and that would be would do us good results. And in between, the recover part should not be a very difficult part for the engineering R&D sector, at least the ones which are so much dependent on the software. I guess that goes on as normal there. But it's as I said earlier, taking a telescopic view on the business, it's a different story altogether, and the story varies from sector to sector. So that's my view.
Very good, GNV. It's good to know. It's heartening to know that your short-term view is very positive, and you don't see that a humongous impact, if any. I think you're saying that most people are being able to produce, and GIC and your overall activities are continuing. Over to Vinay. Vinay, also please provide your introduction a little bit and what you do in the organization, and from the same lenses that we have just discussed about survival, recovery, reinvent, how has COVID impacted you? Vinay?
Good morning, everyone. I'm the managing director for Infineon Technologies, a German multinational world leader in semiconductors for automotive, power electronics, and also security. 7.5–8 billion euro company. We have a large establishment here in India, focusing on both marketing and sales. I'm also responsible for the business in India, as well as R&D. So let me, Samir, begin quickly with a global overview of our experience in the business side before I launch into the implications for R&D and as we are affected. In addition to the consumption demand reduction, as we see broadly, the manufacturing capacity has also shrunk. So in effect, there is an uncertainty in the entire value chain. Companies who are our customers are continuing to take the purchase orders against which they had, the materials against which they had placed an order against. And the supply chain is also, the channel partners, for example, are holding on to the inventory. So we don't see any cancellations at this point in time for the components that we produce. However, how far will this go on? How long will this go is a big question mark, because I think the industry still is trying to figure out whether it's a V kind of a return or a U kind of a return back to business. Hopefully right now it's still a V as it appears. So the capacity is being consumed. However, there is tentativeness in the industry. We see that in the Indian industry, our channel partners, customers are already beginning to think of invoking force majeure. And that starts to stress the financials of our channel partners and their ability to deliver further. So broadly speaking, not a major impact on the semiconductor industry at this point in time. We also look at the stock prices are holding up pretty well globally. On the R&D side, of course, there is significant precaution already in place. They have hiring freezes in most companies, and this is also pre-COVID days because the business has not been booming, to say the least. Cost containment measures are all over. Engineering deliverables are still ongoing. Now with COVID, we have been working from home for the last 4 weeks nearly. We started a week before the announcement of the government of Karnataka, and it's about 4 weeks now. But we observe the productivity of our staff is up to 80%. I would say between 60 and 80% productivity. So in general, our deliverables and customer commitments are not broadly affected. However, of course, there is a percentage of population that needs computer resources to be in office, and that is totally non-productive. We're trying to see how we can recover from that part. In the short term, I don't see any reduction in contractors or consultants or permanent staff. So I think so far with GNV, I concur, situation seems to be stable for India ER&D.
That's indeed heartening once again. So that's a second, I guess, GIC point of view, which gives a fairly positive short-term view. We'll come to the longer term in a minute, Vinay, but thanks for that. Now, moving a little bit, I know that we needed a bit of balance on this debate. We've got an ESP in the panel, and we needed to have two, but maybe we will get some of the questions from some of the other ESPs to provide the balance. I'd like to very warmly welcome Abhishek Sinha, COO of L&T Technology Services. Your perspectives will perhaps be different. Over to you, Abhishek, on the impact.
Yeah, thanks, Samir. Am I audible?
Yes, Abhishek.
Yeah? Perfect. So very quick introduction about myself. I run the operations for L&T Technology Services. LTTS is a pure play engineering services providing company to customers worldwide. And we cater to industries, most industries, transportation inclusive of automotive, aero, rail, telecom and high tech, plant engineering or process industries, industrial products, which is manufacturing, oil and gas, utilities industries, and medical devices. So very broad spectrum of services across various customers. Now coming to the question at hand, I think survive is a strong word, I mean, and even a negative word at that. But I do understand the sentiment behind the question. I would like to say surviving, or rather adapting to the situation like this is all about a mindset. We need to be resilient, of course, that goes without saying. But the two most important qualities that one would need in current times would be adaptability and empathy. And I'll try to elaborate on that. I mean, if you look as an engineering company, R&D company, I don't think we would have imagined remote working to the tune of 90+%. This was just out of the blue. My compliments to our entire industry on how everyone has adapted very quickly to these conditions of work from home. In LTTS, like other engineering companies, we had projects that were dependent on hardware and lab equipment. One interesting thing we did was we took customer approvals proactively, and we were able to create home labs. What we did was we identified one of the smartest members in the project, and who had a good ambience at home, of course. And we moved the hardware and lab equipment to that person's house in a room. And we created that as a hub, and that became the hub, and the colleagues in that project became the spokes, and they would directly work with that person. That has really helped us in, I think, a higher work from home percentage than we normally could have achieved. Also, without us asking, our employees decided to work from home in 3 shifts. We all know about internet connectivity issues in India, bandwidth issues. So there are people working actually around the clock. We didn't tell them, but they did the speed test and they realized that working at 3 a.m. to 9 a.m. Is far more productive than starting work at 9:30 a.m. Right? So people just worked it out, and projects have been able to work in that manner. The second point was empathy. I think empathy with our employees were extremely critical. We have extended help in the best possible manner to employees, but keeping connected with the customers, empathizing with them, really trying to understand how proactively and innovatively we can help them. They're seeking help. I mean, I don't think customers really want to shut down, furloughs. They're seeking help. They're looking at innovative solutions and how companies can help them in tiding through this phase. And I think we are doing a pretty good job there. Direct CXO connects at multiple levels. For our top strategic accounts, I would say top 100 accounts, we very early created business impact analysis document, which is part of our BCP plan. And we were able to share this with our customers and how we are tiding through this phase. And it was very well appreciated. Our Global Engineering Academy, again, the current times, very quickly adapted from in-house or in-class training to online trainings. Employees love it. And last but not the least, our HR through lockdown online challenges that they launched. Well, it's become a big rage in the company and people are talking about it. And every day there is a challenge that HR poses, online challenge, and you can see lots of people participating. The feedback has been tremendous. So short term, yes, there are challenges. Coming from Bangalore, none of us are complaining. Less traffic, less, I mean, it's beautiful. But work is impacted definitely in the short term. Because of our connects with the customer, we don't think it's going to be a long lasting effect.
Okay, excellent. I think the key words that I took away was adaptability and empathy. And when we talk about empathy and about, how humans can deliver more than commensurate, more than linear value, I get all wound up for those of you who know me well. And I'll come back to that issue in a minute. But I'd like to talk about two dimensions that I'd like to ask questions on. And they are the following. One is geography, because I'm sure the people who are listening would like to know from you your perspectives about your markets and about whether we are not so negatively impacted because the panelists are have a certain inclination towards a certain industry or geography. So I'd like to take these two dimensions. What industries do you serve? We heard the previous speakers speaking about the telecoms and the medtech industry will definitely be up and up. There's no question of it being down at all. And of course, there'll be declining trends in the automotive industry. A lot of us serve the automotive industry, I know. And then there's aerospace, which I know some of the larger ESPs serve as well. So two dimensions that I'd like you to comment. And I'd also like to bring in the geography element of it, because in the council, we speak a lot about how can we do more with Japan, how can we do more with Germany, and of course, traditionally, our large market has been the US. Now, interestingly enough, Japan has made a move, right? Has made a move to look at, I'm not going to talk negatively, but look at other sources of engineering and manufacturing as well, and manufacturing linked to engineering, and come to that. So Japan has already moved. Germany is kind of doing better on the whole recovery from the COVID crisis thing. And USA, dare I say, is close to India right now. I mean, all the visits that have happened, there's a positive sentiment. So I'd like to understand from you all one by one, what are the two dimensions of your services or where you're serving? Your industries that you serve, are there any industries that are in the collapse list, such as aerospace and perhaps automotive in the midterm? And also, are there any geographical predispositions to what you do? Just like to understand your perspective. So we'll go this time the reverse order. Maybe we'll take Abhishek reverse order and see where his perspectives are on these two dimensions.
Yeah, sure, Samir.
Abhishek?
Yeah, am I audible? Audible, right?
Yeah, you are Abhishek.
Yeah, so I see, if you look from a geography perspective, let me just start first with from a broader global perspective. I mean, there's a clear indication that there are countries which have decided to move away from its manufacturing based in China. I mean, that's out there. We don't need to hide that. But I think there are countries like Vietnam and even some of the African countries, I think are, I would say, far more aggressive, humble, and even welcoming in inviting these industries to these countries. I think in the short term, India will lose out. I mean, that's my thinking. I think the FDI regulations in place, I don't think we'll lose out in the midterm. Our government will quickly turn around and maybe even shed some of its arrogance or maybe the protectionist nature, which I think is needed today because of the COVID situation, and come up with policies that be more enticing. But that is from the manufacturing side, and I'm not an expert there, so let me not talk more on that front. Now, when it comes to IT and ER&D space, I think India will benefit the most from the current situation. And why do I say that? Let me expand a bit on that. I think the senior leaders in our customer organizations, be it Germany, be it Japan, be it US, any of these countries, the main countries from where most business comes, UK, of course, I think they will sit up and notice that their own employees are all working from home. Now, these same employees who earlier said that the work cannot be offshored have nothing to fight. I mean, the leaders will say, if this work can be done from home in London or in Stockholm or in Washington, why the hell can it not be done from India? I think it's a very strong sentiment that's going to come out. And especially in the post-COVID days, there's going to be reduced budget. There are reduced budgets already there, but budgets are going to be further cut down. And I see extreme offshoring as a way of life going forward, because I think it's proven that a lot of work can be done outside the offices of these companies. I think India, being a de facto English speaking engineering hub, IT hub for the world, is going to benefit the most, right? Of course, on the flip side, the cross-border travel is restricted and so on and so forth. But broadly speaking, I think it's not going to be one geography, one specific country. That's why I'm not restricting my answer to a specific country. But I think most countries will go for extreme offshoring. Coming to the specific question, the industries, Samir, I think it's out there. Automotive, oil and gas are the most impacted, and they will be for the short term. There's no two ways about it. But there are a lot of, I think, skills in these industries which are relevant for other industries. Image processing, excellent example. The image processing skills in the automotive industry are extremely relevant for the medical industry, which is a booming sector. And I think the need for us is now to see which are these skills which are coming out of sectors which are low in demand, and quickly repurpose them for the sectors which are high in demand without, I think, aggressively shunning people in those sectors away. I think that's key. I'll just pause here.
Oh, that's terrific. In fact, somebody asked a question about diversification in the previous sessions, and it's very, very good point. Our industry is going to be also looking at doing other things besides their core activities. But we'll come to that in a minute. Moving to Vinay. Vinay, your perspectives both on the two dimensions. Are walls going to be built up, or our relationship with these countries and the companies that you serve, they're going to improve, and also the industries that you serve?
Let me begin with the business that we cater to, or the industries that we cater as a semiconductor company. Automotive, like I mentioned earlier, is affected.
Yeah.
But to a greater extent, I think, rather than the industries which have had a broad impact, the supply chain is getting constrained very dramatically. Now, various companies have moved some of their electronics manufacturing from China to Vietnam or to Thailand, depending on the country of origin. However, we noticed during when Wuhan was hit by a corona and there was a lockdown, it doesn't matter where you have your final manufacturing and assembly. You are extremely dependent on one country for a large part of your component supply chain. Now, this has had a big impact on all companies, irrespective of where you have your intermediate manufacturing and the final assembly, because the components still depend heavily on China for sourcing. Now, luckily, China has recovered to a great extent compared to many others, and that is a good sign for the semiconductor industry. Now, from an ER&D perspective, there isn't any, as a German company, and since you also asked about maybe an emphasis on German perspective towards ER&D in India, companies have been growing. We as a German semiconductor company have been growing at about 15 to 20% year on year in ER&D in India. And I can tell you there are a couple of other German companies in the electronic and high-tech space that have been growing at a faster rate. So I don't think growth rate is as much an issue. It is just that the German industries predominantly in the past have been hardware oriented, whether it's mechanical or high-tech or precision industry, and of course, and electronics. The software content in their business is now only gradually increasing compared to, let's say, the US market. And the role of digitalization in the industries now with Industry 4.0 is also increasing. So net, I would be inclined to believe that the German industry will either offshore or outsource to India at an increased rate going into the future, because the software content in their industries is increasing. And this is also what we experience. India being a software-centric R&D organization, you see, whenever you talk about software, naturally the first choice is India. And I don't see any aversion there from a GIC perspective. I hope that gives you a perspective about how the German companies would look at ER&D in India, especially coming from a GIC. We have not seen any aversion towards outsourcing. Of course, time to time, as an industry with certain distance from and geographical distance as well as time zone, we have to prove that we can work as effectively. And it's not about the physical distance, it's about the mental distance that we have to take care of. And as long as we are able to deal with it, I think companies will continue to grow in the ER&D space in India.
That's awesome. GNV, perspectives on this, on the countries you're associated with, obviously 9 countries, Sweden being your headquarters. How do you see this playing out?
Multiple questions here, Samir, so I would go one by one. Let me take the first question, the first part of your question, which spoke about industries and sectors. I've said this earlier. I think it's going to be a big, band of reactions that we would see from industry. So on one hand, you would have, as you mentioned rightly, telecom and maybe pharma, maybe even pulp and paper, which would do pretty well. But you would have certain other industries that we see already on the verge of collapse, and that could be maybe oil and gas and automobiles, etc., etc. So while this might change a bit, or even to some extent as we go along, largely this is how it's going to be in the near future. So that's about the industry sectors in general as we see it, and these also represent mostly the industries that we serve as automation suppliers from ABB. Now, when you look at our own, my own industry or the sector that I am in churning out automation products and solutions, I would look at it in 2 parts again: hardware as well as software. And I should say that a major part of what we do is focused on the knowledge and software. So when it comes to hardware, yes, there are some dependencies on certain countries which we would have to relook at. But probably our strategy earlier to look at diversification is paying off, and then so it would remain largely, I would say, the same with some minor adjustments. So we probably would see certain countries in the Eastern Europe becoming more prominent for us and more important for us as compared to what they were in the past. So that's how I would say it. But when it comes to software, it's very interesting. We did have a program earlier. This is from my global point of view. We did have a program globally to see what we could do in countries like India, in countries like Poland, which obviously offers a lot when it comes to talent, when it comes to variety of talent on the software side. And I guess we were on the right path there. So for me, it is just an acceleration of our program that we had earlier that we will probably see in the post-COVID scenario, where we probably accelerate our program of moving to certain countries from a few other countries that we were in. And this is for various reasons. Two of the most important ones being availability of talent and, of course, cost. And from my point of view, I would say availability of talent and quite high talent would come first before the cost. So it talks a lot about countries like India, which are now moved from being a cost arbitrage country to a talent rich country, I would say. So from that angle, we would continue to shift our the way we do things and from where we do things. And so that's a continuation for us. And definitely it is looking at countries which are, countries like India, or Poland, or even some other Eastern countries. So that's how the shift is going to happen. And when I look at it from a pure Indian point of view, where this comes from the fact that I was leading a lot of these initiatives to make India more, I would say, relevant in our sort of industry, I would feel quite happy the way things are moving, and it would be good for India, I would say, in the short, medium, as well as long term. From a country perspective, especially from India, it's going to be good. And if I were to move into my global role and change my hats and look at it, I think we are on in the right direction to sort of diversify ourselves. Look at 3-4 countries providing us with both the hardware as well as software solutions, so that we are sort of insulated from any eventuality that can affect a certain part of the globe or a certain way of doing things. Having said all this, from my point of view, what would I look for in locations that I would like to grow in? I think the factors would be, as I said earlier, number one, the talent availability. But then I would also now look very clearly at transparency, how transparency works out from that location. I would also look at long-term sustainability. So I would have these two other factors which are coming in as priorities, perhaps even above cost and even above many other things, which were definitely there earlier. So if I were to look at talent availability, transparency, even if there's chaos, and then sustainability, I would feel very comfortable moving into certain countries like India as compared to many other countries, and sort of realign our global strategies.
Excellent. That's wonderful. And I'm going to pick on some of the key words that you have spoken about, as well as Vinay and Abhishek. But I have one more line of questions, because now we are moving into the part of the debate, which speaks about, can the ER&D industry really be the key, the fulcrum, the pivot that can help the entire economic growth for India? And that's the debate. And in order to kind of facilitate some discussions around that, the most partly contentious, but more importantly, a huge opportunity for India, which was not looked at, is the fact that countries are going to be looking at alternative manufacturing bases. And they are actively, companies in Japan and the US and worldwide, they have already announced humongous packages to move to other countries. And India will surely be one in the top 5 or the top 3 list. Traditionally, we've said, yes, digital engineering, for sure, India is a great destination and that's going to grow. And what I'm hearing you all say is that definitely that's going to be accelerated. And India is a great destination. But linked to manufacturing, there will be engineering. What was the traditional engineering work? Do you really see that happening? Or is that once again a pipe dream and it's more fluff and it'll go to Vietnam or it'll go to some other part of the world, maybe East Europe or some other part? Is manufacturing going to drive engineering services as well as we look at nonlinear growth in the future? So let's start with Vinay this time, a little randomly different.
Well, thus far, if you look at the R&D in electronics companies in India, it has predominantly been software, less so systems, which talk about entire product, and less so hardware. Now, there is hardware capability, and the government R&D institutions have proven that there is enough hardware as well as systems capabilities. For some reason, it has not been appealing to the global multinationals to house hardware and software together and thereby systems. Perhaps it's linked to a certain extent with the lack of manufacturing capability. If the R&D carried out has to be shifted to some other country where manufacturing takes place and where systems have to be integrated, then why do it in India? Because there is no advantage besides the low cost and the talent availability. Second, India has never been a large market, though it's a growing market, but not a leading market, not a strategic market or a key market for a majority of electronics. It's okay in India that we also inherit the Me Too products from the global availability, and with market leaders such as US and Europe defining the architecture and defining the roadmap for product development. Now, I think this is a good time also because you need a trigger. China has been massively focusing on this, and you look at many Indian electronics companies too. They have at various instances given up their engineering and chosen to move to China for importing the complete kit because it works out to be cheaper, innovation is faster in China, but the investment you have to make for the market that you serve does not justify. Now, if when the multinationals move in here and also global manufacturing shifts here, it will trigger some synergistic activities between manufacturing as well as R&D, and not just for services, but also for global product companies. So that is undoubtedly relevant and valid. The question is, how can we now take the first step in making manufacturing more attractive in this country? Of course, now we are a significant market for electronics, so that is now foregone conclusion. Now it's about bringing in manufacturing, and then you combine the market need as well as the R&D and manufacturing together. I think this trio of capabilities will position us well. So we are very keenly awaiting. The government has come up with a new incentive program for electronic manufacturing country, looking at also the intentions and the insecurities of global multinationals. And I just hope that in the next 6 months to 1 year, a couple of companies will make their first headway in setting up manufacturing. And there will definitely be a spillover effect for both services as well as for the innovation centers in India.
Vinay, we spoke offline where we spoke about the EV industry, and we said that there is a phase-wise manufacturing plan that the government of India is encouraging us, or rather requiring EV organizations, such as in the area of electric compressor, motor control units, DC-DC chargers, etc. So, without getting into a discussion on that today, all I can say is one of the industries is EV is definitely going to accelerate its PMP or manufacturing plan and all the engineering linked to it to India. Moving now to maybe GNV, and I got a message that the audio is breaking. Is the audio clear now, Devanshi?
Yes, Samir.
You
Okay.
break up once in a while, Samir.
Oh, I do? Okay. Well, telecoms guys, wake up. Anyway, so GNV, sorry, is manufacturing linked ER&D going to be helping get the nonlinear growth? Are you there, GNV, or have we lost you?
GNV, you're on mute.
Sorry, I'm back. I hope now. Am I audible?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, Samir, this question, was it in the context of India as a country?
Yes. When manufacturing shifts to India, we see some ER&D activities also increasing, maybe for products in India or whatever.
Yeah. So I would say this, that ideally from any manufacturer's parents' point of view, it's very, very good and very ideal to have both the engineering, even the R&D, as well as manufacturing together. Nothing can be better than that. But you know that it's not happened all the while. In India's case in particular, I think we have excelled when it comes to support for R&D, support for engineering, and in the later years, taking up many key roles and key leads, both in engineering as well as R&D. But to this extent, we haven't seen progress made on the hardware side or on the manufacturing side. My view on this, I think both on engineering as well as R&D, which is largely talent and people related, of which we have plenty in India, we can do plenty of things in spite of the government, let me put it this way. But manufacturing is not so. We need a very good understanding and cooperation between what we can do as a technical group of talented guys and the government. So I think it is largely dependent on that. But I see a lot of initiatives coming off late from the government side, wherein they recognize the potential, and very clearly the intentions are far better than what it used to be earlier, to make India a hub for manufacturing as well. And nothing can be better than that, in the sense that you have the entire chain, starting from R&D, engineering, and the actual manufacturing, happening mostly in one place. So that's how I see it. I don't have a crystal ball now to predict what can happen. But when I look into this crystal ball, whatever little bit I have, I very clearly see good and better intentions. So we really have to hope at this point that these intentions translate into actions and results. So that's the way I would see it from my point of view. When I put myself in the shoes of the consumers or the customers or the people who need these services, I would say again, as I mentioned earlier, people are looking at a couple of additional things now. One is most manufacturers or most customers are looking at diversifying their portfolios. They will look at different or more locations, and from their point of view, the manufacturing and supply chain would definitely realign itself. I'm sure about it. And one of the important things that the buyers would look for would be, as I said earlier, number one, very high transparency and very high sustainability indications. So if I consider both these, I think we score over many other locations worldwide, and we can do a far better job when it comes to transparency and when it comes to maybe even sustainability. It's only that the government has to tweak a bit on their past records of being a little bit randomized in their decision making. If we take care of that, I don't see any hurdles or big hurdles that should come in the way of shifting, if not heavily, at least to some extent, which can be a good beginning for India to actually become a manufacturing hub as well. Over to you, Samir.
Terrific. Okay. There are a lot of questions coming on talent, empathy, people, but also some of the other ones that I will keep for the Q&A. We're running a little bit on time, but I would request Abhishek to also give his views on the same topic before we get to questions.
Yeah, thanks, Samir. I think we should move on because what GNV and Vinay have covered are fundamentally what it is. I mean, in the short term, I would still say that no, but in the medium term, with how the government is going to open up and invite these companies into India with SOPs and something which interests them will definitely help. As far as talent is concerned, I'm absolutely sure the quantity and quality of talent is there in India. And we Indians are good at innovating and learning new technologies, new things. So when it comes to engineering and R&D, and I'm absolutely sure that we'll create the depth and scale as needed. Yeah, so let's leave it there and move on.
Sure. Two questions that I will pose, picking up from the Zoom group chat and also from an offline conversation that I've been having. This is to GNV. GNV, ABB is also a customer of ESO. And what guidance would you give your ESO suppliers? I mean, what are you going to, turn them off, increase? What's going to happen to, your service suppliers?
From my point of view, it's only, I would say that it's only set to go up. I would definitely be in a mode of encouraging this and taking it to a higher scale and maybe even deeper levels.
That's terrific. There is a big question on customer data security when it comes to working from home. And this is like kind of be moving now to people and how people are responding and reacting, etc. Maybe who can take this? Maybe Abhishek, you can do it as well as Vinay. How are you dealing with data security?
Yeah, I think data security is something that's coming up. There's Abhishek here. That's coming up loud and strong from everyone. I think more than the customers asking us that, it is the general, other people more concerned about it because we are keeping customers updated on how we are keeping their data secure. VPN connections, second factor authentication, ensuring any machine having the latest antivirus updates, And when you work through VPN remote data, you cannot even copy paste what is there on your, because you're just connecting to a machine in office and from there connecting to the company servers, right? So you're not even able to copy paste anything from the screen onto your machines. A lot of work is being done by the security personnel. We're checking of logs almost every day. There are tools which automatically check the logs. Of course, there's a manual checking happening. Very limited people, named people are given access more than is necessary. I think a lot of work is done, but what cannot be, if someone is intent to steal data, especially in today's times, is intent because you can take photographs, for example, right? And that is not avoidable. There could be someone, even the machines, by the way, are coming with screens where you cannot, the person standing next to you cannot see the screen, right? So I think a lot of advancement has happened, but we are also working very closely with our partners on data security and cyber security enhancements to the network. And that is going to be the way of life going forward. So the work from home is going to be the way of life. We just have to embrace it and make it work. And I would leave it there.
Thanks,
Vinay probably can
Abhishek.
add more.
Yeah, Vinay, your perspectives on working from home and data security.
Well, you go back about 5-10 years when service providers were shifting their value proposition from enterprise installation, that is where the app would be installed on enterprise servers within the company in a secure area, to now over the cloud. I mean, for example, in Infineon, we use customer relationship management tool that's completely on the cloud for nearly 100% of our business, which is worth billions. Now that insecurity is gone because I think the whole system has guaranteed or has worked on the security aspects and the emotional aspects. But the same thing applies to also our own employees. Earlier we were very hesitant in providing laptops to our employees because unless they carry their intellectual property back home, etc. Now every employee in the company is issued laptop by default, which means that they also carry quite some amount of workflow. Now, this is also how it evolved with our service providers. Initially, we said we insist that your employees work in our facility in a secure network. Now, we work with certain service providers who are involved in intellectual property, but working out of, let's say, Trivandrum. And the technologies there, such as virtual desktop infrastructure, we call it VDI, by which they are able to securely work off our network with, let's say, full audit traceability of the activities that they carry out. So there is a certain amount of security. So this also extends to work from home for our own employees as well as contractors, consultants who we employ at our office. So broadly speaking, I think the technology is pretty mature. Now, the second part, as Abhishek mentioned, is about the integrity aspect of the people. If you are hell-bent on stealing, you can still do so, right? Now, that is where I think the organization culture as well as the national culture comes in. I mean, for us, also for our stakeholders in Germany, that there is any doubt about IP theft in this country, at least because of our background, at least there is no insecurity that this might happen. I mean, I'm not saying it will not happen, but the worry is a lot less compared to some other countries which where you see publicly prevalence of IP theft. So I think these factors are somehow creating this confidence in organizations that working from home, working with service providers, using secure networks and remotely is not as big an issue. But from an IT perspective, we do take all measures that are necessary to ensure both encryption of the networks and data security. But would someone ask me a question, Vinay, is this safe? Are we afraid? Do we stand a chance of losing any IP when employees are working from home and logging into the company network? I have not had for quite some time, not just related to COVID, but also for quite some time, anyone in the company asking me this question. So, which means that we have been able to manage it very well so far as a country, as a national organization or a subsidiary. There have not been any historical precedents of IP theft, even through an audit mechanism in the company. So, to me, data security, data protection, I would not be as concerned, but we do have systems in place to take care of
it. That's very useful. The EDI, audit traceability, as well as the cultural issues, very, very useful. What I'm taking away from this so far, and it's been a very, very engaging debate, is that the cup seems to be more than half full. It seems to be that we will not only, once of course we are allowed to get back to engaging with customers, provided they are engaged, if they're not already digitally, then there's going to be more activity. Obviously, some industries will suffer in the short term, but in the mid to long term, there's going to be lots of opportunities to rethink and reevaluate the priorities, obviously, but to bounce back and do more from India and do more in India for India as well as for the globe. I think some comments have come, not some questions, about the fact that industry by industry, we've got to engage with the government to see how engineering, R&D and manufacturing can reside in certain clusters within India. For example, medical devices and medical equipment, how can Pune perhaps be a hub, and some of the other places as well. Also, similarly, we are having the same conversations around EVs as to how we can build, how we can move faster towards phase-wise manufacturing everything, including cells, if not fuel cells and batteries, etc. I would like to take the opportunity to hear from both Ajay and Karthik, if there are no more questions, because we've got a couple or 3 minutes. First, thank GNV. Excellent perspectives from you, Vinay, as well as Abhishek. It's been a very engaging debate. Since we have 3 or 4 minutes, I'd like to hear from Ajay on his perspectives, and Karthik, maybe you can come first, and then Ajay. If you're still there.
Hey, this is Ajay. I'm not sure if Karthik is there. First of all, thanks, Samir, for running such an engaging conversation. Thanks, GNV, Abhishek, and Vinay for your perspectives. I think the whole session was very insightful. Lots of interesting discussions carrying on the earlier sessions in the morning. So, like Samir concluded, I think it was very heartening to see the glass being more than half full. I think that was the gist of how this conversation went, and I think there is opportunities being seen around. Of course, there are certain challenges that whether it is the government support for promoting certain opportunities, how to make good on certain opportunities and such. So it's great to see that. And I think, I'm very, very excited about, obviously, our ER&D community fighting this very well together through cooperation between GCCs as well as ESOs, and working with the customers wherever they are, trying to solve their problems, being agile, being flexible, working with them to make sure as the world gets redefined and as our customers start reorienting, that the team back here will step up and do all the right things. So with respect to very quickly doing the work from home realignment in a extremely rapid pace, without really creating too much pain for any of the customers, I think has really been positive for us. And similarly, I think with the same agility and speed, if we were to reorient with our customers and their customers, to make sure that our customers are successful all over the place, I think we could really take a good advantage and grow our sector. So that's kind of my conclusion from what I heard, Samir. So great job running this panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any last words from GNV? Any word of advice or just parting thoughts? GNV?
I think we need to be optimistic right now that we are looking at all the conversations that we have had. We continue to be optimistic and believe in ourselves. And I think as demonstrated many times in the past, we as humans are very resilient, and we would overcome this crisis too, and probably reinvent ourselves to be more efficient and much more productive as we go along. That's the way I see this. So it's a mixture of being a little bit hurt, I would say, by the scale of this this pandemic, but also looking forward to with a lot of optimism as to what we can do better and how we can learn from this phase and go into the future. That's how I would sum up from my side.
Excellent. Thank you.
From my side, 4 weeks ago, a week before Mr. Modi announced the lockdown, there were tremendous nervous moments all over because we as a country took the lead in the lockdown while the other countries were, including Singapore, regional headquarters, folks were working from work. Now, we were very worried too, whether to what extent will the customer commitments be not met and what can be the possible consequences. Will there be a shift in activities from this country to others because we are not as resilient? But we have done a remarkable job, and I think that's we should congratulate every one of these employees in this industry that has managed to work very well from home. And Abhishek also mentioned about it, that they were done a fantastic job. It's superlative. We did not, as management, expect that we would be so, will be progressing so very well working from home. And I think that's a learning for us as a leadership in the industry, that work from home, now we should consider it a lot more seriously than we have been before. Most of the companies have been averse to work from home of their employees because of a variety of reasons. Whether you talk about security or this trust, whether people will work for home or work from home. But this has proven beyond doubt that people are committed even when they're working from home, and they have a lot more flexibility. And leadership in various industries should consider work from home whenever there's a possibility as a way of working. And I think this is a redefining movement for the industry. I think if we can crack this, I think we are at the next level of optimization of our talent force. Thank you.
Thank you. Abhishek?
Samir, just 2 points. I think one of the points we have probably missed out is we will see a lot more women coming into work, both in IT and ER&D industry post-COVID era because of work from home. And I think that will do wonders to our industry. I think that's going to be a big shift, and we should embrace that shift. And last but not the least, I really think that as an industry, the Indian industry, ER&D, we must up the ante on the concept of extreme offshoring. And the message should be, if it can be done from home, then it ought to be done from India, right? It has to be that, right? And that will benefit all of us. And that will definitely help in ER&D industry pivoting the India's economic growth, what this session is about. Thank you.
Excellent point about gender inclusion more and more. Thanks everyone. I think it's been very engaging, and I would just round it up by saying stay safe, optimistic, creative, and happy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Samir, for moderating such a wonderful, intriguing panel discussion. And thank you everyone over there in the panel for sharing your perspectives and viewpoints. So in these disruptive times, when businesses are using digital transformation to keep it afloat, focus on data protection, privacy, and contractual obligations is imperative. And seeing that, cybersecurity, I guess, will be a new paradigm in business. With that, we come to the end of day one sessions. Thank you again, once again, every one of you, all the speakers, for sharing business perspectives on COVID-19 crisis. And I'm sure we will all get through it together, seeing India as the world's option with its global credibility. See you all on 27th April at 9:15 a.m. for our next set of thought leaders in the ER&D space. Till then, every one of you stay safe and be connected. Thank you.
Thank you, Samir, for an excellent moderation.
Thank you. Thanks, Vinay.
Thank you all. Thank you, Samir.